So we always come back to inflation. I mean, it doesn't seem to matter what topic we wind up wanting to talk to, we end up bringing up this topic. So the question is, there's a lot of talk, especially in the US, about that at the moment.
Hmm.
You know, on even anything. Doesn't matter what it's, if it's related to money or it's related to some sort of stimulus or it's related to jobs. This inflation is a word in that article. Um, do you want to give everyone a bit of a brief overview of why that's such topical at the moment? Is it simple? Is it just as simple as because they're printing too much money, or is there more to it? And what is the way around it apart from raising interest rates? I mean, does it become its own self-fulfilling prophecy as the more they go down, the more it inflates, and so on and so on? How does that
Yeah.
work?
Well, the inflation story is several-fold at the moment. So we've got a lot of pressures that have built up in the economy. So first of all, you've got things like labor pressures. So people have not returned to work maybe as quickly as they could have due to the reopening in the U.S. But certainly wage growth has lagged over the course of the last few years. But now we're seeing shortages of labor. So even basic jobs like just getting people to go back and work in hospitality is something that many businesses are struggling with. So we have wage price inflation, which means that wages are going up. So margins are getting squeezed. And what suppliers or service providers can do, of course, is they can absorb that, or what they can do is raise prices. And so many of them are raising prices. So that's one of the first big issues that is having to be dealt with. I think this is happening in Australia as well. The second big issue is there are supply constraints. So the global economy just got completely stuffed during the COVID period, and we have not seen a return to the normal level of global trade. So all the ships and things that are moving stuff around the planet, I have, and it's not anecdotal, it's actually real. There are literally hundreds of freighters and shipping container vessels that are sitting off the coasts of major seaports. So the U.S., in California, on the Atlantic side as well, because the port capacity is constricted. So they don't have enough, for example, truckers to move this stuff around. So there's a number of things, you could call them supply chain bottlenecks that have occurred. And this too is driving up the cost of goods, because if you have a supply issue or a scarcity issue, then of course the prices are going to rise. That will also resolve itself over time. And then finally, probably the biggie, the 800-pound gorilla in the room is, of course, they have printed, this is a technical term, a shit ton of money. And it's found its way into, which it always does, into things like housing and the stock market in the first instance. And so what we've seen is a lot of asset price inflation. And that's what happens during Quad 2, is you see a lot of inflation coming into the market. And so inflation is the result of money printing. It isn't money printing necessarily. So the money printing is growing the money supply, or the base of money out there, but you still have to have velocity of money. So the turnover of the currency and the fear that the dollar you receive today isn't going to buy the same amount of goods and services tomorrow. And so people get out there and they spend it and they increase the velocity of money. Anyway, all that is to say that inflation has really begun to tick upwards. It's also a function in many cases of the US dollar and its strength or weakness. Now, surprisingly, the U.S. dollar has started to it's entered into a bit of a bullish trend at the moment. So what that means is that it will appreciate against most other major currencies: the yen, the euro, the Aussie, the pound, the Swiss franc, etc. And so, which is unusual, because typically the U.S. dollar only does really well in Quad 4. So this could be a very short-term thing. We'll have to see. But things like oil and all the commodity complex also have, we've seen price increases across the board because of supply constraints, et cetera, as I've already mentioned. So for the time being, the inflation story is going to stick around. The Fed, you may recall, I think we probably did this on a show a couple months ago, where I used the word transitory. They were trying to paint this inflation thing as a transitory thing, like it was only temporary, like it was going to be around for a month or something like that. Like, are you serious? These guys are always behind the curve. But anyway, now they've acknowledged that it's actually a thing, and the consumer's feeling it big time. You know, the prices of rents in the U.S. have gone just through the absolute roof. So if you're a commercial property owner in the U.S. right now, you're laughing because rents are up in some major cities by 70 or 80%. It's just phenomenal. So that's inflation, and it has a wide-ranging impact. And as we've also discussed, it's the silent tax. It's the tax that you don't pay explicitly, but when you go to do your shopping, inflation means that your basket of goods is a little bit smaller.